Hi there, it's Dermot again, and just going to continue with the step 5 lecture. Um, right, and the fifth step is admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. So I'll just explain that for you. So admitted to God, higher power, or your soul, or your conscience, ourselves and our conscience, our emotions, another human being, or being heard. So really, in the sense, when you admit to anything, you take ownership of it. I did this, I did that, I was this way or that way. You start to take ownership. It's the beginning of, I suppose, acceptance. And when you admit to something, when you admit to your wrongs or whatever it is that you admit to, again, there's a power in that. There's a letting go in that. There's a vulnerability in that. You're opening up, your shame and your guilt, your fears to another person. You're sharing those with another person. And that has a very therapeutic effect because you're able to start to release all that pain, guilt, shame, remorse, you name it, that's inside of you. The exact nature. Guilt and shame. So the exact nature of our wrongs. So we look at the guilt and shame, as I said. What's holding you back? How do you feel guilty? How do you feel ashamed? What are your resentments and fears? What resentments have you had, you know, for a long time, maybe recent resentments, and just looking at all your resentments, breaking that down. So it's a lot of the step 4 work which you've done already is now going into this fifth step. And then especially the fears, because it's fear, that does hold everybody back, that stops everybody in their tracks. So you have to confront, you have to face your fears, you have to be courageous enough to look at them face, in the eye and get through them. The false pride and the ego. The false pride could also be called arrogance, and a lot of people in addiction were arrogant. Arrogant to the point that they felt that they didn't have a problem, it was everybody else who had the problem. And the ego is not necessarily the ego that tells you you have a big head or an arrogant ego, but it's also the ego that tells you that you're not good enough, you never were good enough, you never will be good enough, you'll never succeed, you won't make it, you won't cope, and you won't be able to do it. And then we look at the love and compassion because, we're all born with love and compassion. When you're a baby and you're, a newborn, you're just a bundle of love. You haven't started being programmed yet, so to say, or, being influenced by the outside world. So you're just pure. And that love and compassion, we all have that within us. We have that pureness within us, that love within us, unconditional love. And no matter how bad we are at times, we still always will have that. And it's good to focus in on that. Where is that? If you don't see it now, it's there, but look for it. Right, our wrongs, and as I say, what we did or what we failed to do, how we're sorry for the things we did in our days of addiction in our lives. It's accepting blame and responsibility and taking responsibility. And this is, again, without pointing fingers, without saying, oh, well, I did this because of that, and because of this one, and because of the other. Even in addiction, even when we were in full-blown, suppose, on a full-blown bender, as they say, you still have to take responsibility to an extent. Is that was you taking the action? That was your physical body. So you have to have remorse for that. Although there's nothing you could have done about it at the time, you feel remorseful about it. But you have to accept that that was me. If you stood in the court of law and said, "No, Your Honor, I was drunk at the time," he's not going to look at that. He's going to say, "No, but you did it, and that was that." So it's the same kind of thing. Taking responsibility for even your actions when you were drinking by taking responsibility for your recovery. Okay, just to summarize, the fifth step, and So admitting all our faults helps us to become humble because it helps us to become vulnerable, become more open, become more spiritual, less egoic. And we start to see, I suppose you say, the wood from the trees, to start to see forgiveness, forgiveness in ourselves, forgiveness in others as well. And we start to forgive ourselves too. So that is the humility that we start to feel rather than the humiliation. Asking for forgiveness to your higher power, God, and to ourselves, and that's what it is. Addicts have a tendency of beating themselves up very harshly, even more so than what other people do. So it's time to start forgiving, yourself or themselves or ourselves, because it doesn't make sense not to. There's no point in other people saying, well, I forgive you for what you did. And if you can't do it, forgive yourself, because you won't accept other people's forgiveness in that sense. Courage to honestly tell our story, and that's the most important part of it all. Being vulnerable, being open and honest, and just saying it as it was, saying it as it is. Not editing it or censoring it. Just the whole truth, nothing but the truth. And then letting go of the past to focus on the present and move forward. And you can't move forward unless you let go of the past. As I said before, it's like carrying a bag full of stones. You're just going to drag it everywhere with you, everywhere you go. You need to let it go. You need to get rid of it. At least then you're free to move on. You're free to get on with your life.